For the 360 this month, and for the last 360 video of the year, we would like to talk a little bit about the concept of presence, the concept of being present and time, and what it means to be in the present moment. This is something that the yogis and the meditators have been thinking about for many centuries. It's part of the considerations of many practices of yoga and meditation. Now, this is a time where we transition from one year into another, or many of us do at least. And there's often a sense of looking forward into the future and considering resolutions or practices or new ways that we want to try to be in the world as we move forward into the new year. To put a little bit of context into this, though, and bring it back to the concept of presence, it's interesting to think about what presence has meant, and actually also what time has meant to practices of yoga and meditation. Time has been something that is considered to be material. The concept of the material world and the concept of moving through time, these are all part of the same kind of thing. They are material, they are impermanent, they are transient, they are always changing. They are made up of all these different kind of sensory experiences that are never the same from moment to moment. And because of this, the yogis and the meditators have often tried to seek something beyond time. They've tried to seek something that is outside or beyond the material world. Time in classical yoga tradition, this is referring to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, time is something to actually be transcended. Because it's part of the material world, it is not what the goal is. It's not the goal to be in time and in the material world, but actually to transcend time. This is, of course, talking about it from a metaphysical kind of standpoint. There are other ideas in yoga that talk about consuming time. But there's often this idea, again, to just go beyond our concept of time. Not to be thinking about the past or the future, but to try to find something that is present and something that is so present, an experience that is so present that we actually don't exist in time anymore. Perhaps some traditions, as I was just speaking about, actually believe that eventually we will be liberated. The soul or the self, the Atman, might be liberated to the point that we will just be beyond time. We'll be beyond the material world. That's a very specific idea that belongs to certain traditions. That's not one that perhaps everybody accepts. Certainly not everybody accepts. But it's one perspective. But either way, even if we don't take that idea of transcending time, we can still think again about what it means to be present. So why is this important to yogis and meditators? I want to highlight one practical reason that this is really important. So not a metaphysical reason like I was speaking about earlier, but a practical reason that we can think about presence and we can practice the act of being present in meditation and perhaps in our daily life. The reason for this is that the concept of the self, the concept of the egoic self, the way in which we conceive of a sense of self, this only happens in the past or in the future. So this only happens outside of the present moment. So when we think about our sense of self, our egoic self, we are thinking about something that is rooted to something either in the past, our memories, our traditions, our family, where we came from, our practices, our country, our identity, right? These things that we think are in us, they are who we are, but they are this sense of self. They can exist tied to the past. They can also exist tied to the future. So what we desire, what we hope for, what we might become. Maybe it's a trade or way that we can act in the world, a service that we can do, something that's in the future that will then define us. And so our sense of self, if we really pay attention to it and we think about who am I, this only exists when it is tied to the past or it is tied to the future. And the human mind is very good at going back and forth between the past and the future to create this sense of self. Now, the yogis and the meditators are really interested in what happens if we are not in the past or the future, but we are in the present moment. And so we have practices of meditation that are, for example, following the breath, breathing in and breathing out, inhaling and exhaling, and trying to be aware of every moment, every feeling of that, every moment, every instant that is happening, where the breath is moving. And if we can keep our attention there, it is very difficult to create a sense of self. Because again, a sense of self requires thought, and it requires a thought that is attached either to the past or to the future. So presence through meditation in particular is about being, if you want to put it this way, attached to the very, very, very present moment as it is changing, but not in a way where we are thinking about how it is changing. Only in a way that we are actually in that change of time itself. That is what it means to be present, at least in one definition of being present. And that is partially what the yogis and the meditators are kind of seeking when we practice this idea of presence and when we practice things like presence in meditation. So as we transition in time, we sort of mark the end of a year and we start a new year, it might be helpful to think about what types of sense of self are created in your own mind and your own sense of self that are only attached to the past and the future, but that don't exist in the present moment. And we can do this through practices of following the breath. We can do this through practices of quieting the mind, of finding a way to be very, very present, not thinking about the past and moving into the past, not thinking about the future and trying to move into the future, but being with right that place in between that is just the very, very present moment. And what we might find is that there are no desires in the present moment. There are no things that define us in the present moment. There is only presence itself. So we wish you a very, very happy new year and hope that this sheds some light on ways we can think about transitioning through time, the ways that the metaphysical systems that have backed practices of yoga and meditation maybe have thought about time as something to be transcended ultimately, or something to be consumed and transcended. And also, we can think about that the sense of self that causes us suffering, this is only in the past or the future. This sense of self is never in the present moment. So the more that we can actually practice meditation, quiet the mind, maybe follow the breath, the more we can exist in the present moment itself, the less sort of emotional, the less sort of thinking, feeling, suffering we will have.